Hey, Indian Creek 8th grade students, it's Professor Blazek, and I'd like to welcome you to this installment in our Road to a 4 video series looking at our assessment on short story presentations. Now, there will be 3 learning goals measured in this assessment, the first of which is to provide a summary of a text via the examination of plot, theme, characters, and setting. So in looking to meet this learning goal, ask yourself if your summary includes all 4 required areas, and if your summary connects entirely to the story. If you can answer yes to both of these questions, you will be on your way to meeting the first learning goal. The next learning goal that will be measured is to use evidence from a story to support your summary and thoughts about that story. So again, in looking to meet this learning goal, you can ask yourself if you have used quotations or other pieces from the story to help prove your ideas. This is an idea that we will come back to multiple times in this video, the importance of using information from the story to prove what you know about the story. And this is how you can meet your second learning goal. The final learning goal that will be measured is to use technology to produce writing, present ideas, and collaborate with others. This is a pretty straightforward learning goal, and we don't have any additional questions for it because you're going to be creating presentations on your story and collaborating with your group mates. So having that good group dynamic will help you and your partners meet this learning goal. So let's look at the first step of this project, which is to write a summary of your short story. So some keys to keep in mind when writing an effective summary are not simply rewriting the original story and keeping your summary short and to the point. You want to make sure that you have included all that you need to include when writing your summary, but you don't want to include so much information that you've just basically rewritten the original story, because this isn't the purpose of writing a summary. You also want to make sure that you use your own words, because a summary is your understanding of a story, so it should be written in your own words. Also, always make sure to refer to the main ideas of the story. These are the backbone of the story, so it would make sense that they would be the backbone of your summary. And then finally, you can also keep in mind the who, what, when, where, why, and how of a story when you're summarizing that story. Again, these are all components that will go into any story, so they should also be components that are considered when you're writing a summary. So these are, again, just some keys to keep in mind when you're sitting down to write your summary. Now, a big concept that you can also remember when writing your summary is that after you've written your first draft, it can actually be very helpful to go back and reread the story one more time, just to make sure you've grasped everything that you need to about the story in your summary. You can reread it, look back at your summary, and ask yourself if you've included all the important information you need to, or maybe there are some things you included before that you don't need anymore. This can be a habit that can make your summaries that much better, just taking this little bit of extra time. So here is how the summarizing process can look. First, you'll read your story and make any necessary notes about the story as you read. Then you'll write your first draft of your summary, go back and reread the story one more time, and then make any necessary additions or edits to your final summary. This might seem like a long process, but I promise the more you do it, the easier it will become, and the much better your summaries will be for taking this extra time. So here's an example summary of the short story Thank You Ma'am by Langston Hughes that we read in class earlier. I won't go through and read it all here, but if you pause the video, you can, and you'll see that this 3-page story is boiled down into 6 sentences. Everything important that we talked about from the story is included so that it is a good reflection of the story without being so long that it just becomes a way of rewriting it. So again, just an example summary that you can look back to when writing your own summaries. So now we can look at the second part of this project, which is your group presentation. Now, there are a few different areas that you should make sure you should include in your presentation, and these are the plot and conflicts of your story, the characters who are involved, the setting, and the theme. These were the different components of short stories that we discussed in class, so they should all therefore be included in your presentation. In addition, Include any pictures or other visual aids in your presentation. This will make your presentation look that much more professional and help show your ideas a little bit more clearly. So a big concept to keep in mind when you are sitting down to start working on your presentation, again, is to make sure to include details from the story to support all the areas of your presentation. You always want to go back to the story to provide support for what you say. So when you're spending time collaborating with your group mates, just make sure that you're always asking yourselves if you've included details from the story in every area of your presentation. So let's look a little bit more deeply at the different areas that we discussed that you'll be presenting upon. When you're looking at the plot, you should be focusing on the action of the story, looking at what happens. And you can think about the different plot steps that we discussed in class. So these would be the introduction, the rising action, the climax, the falling action, and the conclusion. This can be a way to help you and your group mates map out your plot. When you're looking at the conflicts in a story, obviously you want to be thinking about the conflicts that occur, but also what types of conflict are they? Are they person versus person, person versus nature, person versus self, versus society, versus fate or God or the supernatural? By being able to label each conflict by its specific type, this will just help show you and your group mates understanding of the conflicts in your story. Now, when you're looking at characters, obviously the first thing you want to do is name the important characters, as well as any other minor characters who are involved in the plot. And to take your analysis a little bit further, you can look at what are their motivations? Why are they acting the way they act? Why do they say the things that they say? Is it out of love, out of hate, out of anger, out of sadness? Thinking about character motivations can really help take your understanding to that next level, because you start thinking about characters more as if they were real life people, as opposed to just people who exist within a story. Also, keep in mind who the protagonist and antagonist is within a story. If it's applicable, it usually is, but there's a chance that it wouldn't be. And then for each character, also keep in mind if you believe they are static or dynamic, and then round or flat. And again, always go back to the story itself, find information in the story that can prove your beliefs on who is static and dynamic and who is round or flat. Again, just the importance of always going back to the story when you're looking at the characters within that story. Now, when looking at the setting, obviously you want to look at the two main parts of setting, which is the when and where are the stories set, but also keep in mind to really take your understanding of the setting to the next level if you see the setting impact the story in any way. So in other words, does the setting force characters to make a decision? Does it create a conflict? By thinking about the setting as an additional player in the story, this can really take your understanding to that next level. And then finally, when you're looking at the theme, this is where you're looking at the messages or lessons within a story, and what does the story say about life overall? And that's the biggest thing that you can do when looking at theme, is being able to take something you've learned from the story, some message you've gotten, and apply it to that bigger picture. That's the mark of any great story. Not just that it entertains you, but that it gives you something that you can apply to your life and to the world overall. Again, something that you want to keep in mind when you're working on this project. So here we'll show some example slides for each of the areas of thank you, ma'am. Again, I won't go through and read each one. You can pause the video if you would like to read them yourselves. But when looking at the plot, you'll see that the important events of the story are included. It's not too long, but it does cover all of the major points of the story that it needs to cover. When looking at the conflicts in the story, there are 3 listed. Each one is described as its particular type, and each one is also examined as far as how it impacts the story and the characters overall. Again, this is the mark of looking at that bigger picture. You can not only find the conflicts, but then explain them as part of the umbrella of the story overall. When looking at the characters, you'll see that we have a physical description, including direct quotations from the story. as well as support from the story when describing each character as either static or dynamic and round or flat. Again, just reinforcing the importance of using the story itself to prove your ideas about that story. When looking at the setting, you'll see a similar theme where information from the story is used to discuss the setting, and then towards the end, the setting is also used to add a little bit more information about the story so that it actually tells us something about the characters who are involved. Finally, when looking at theme, you will see that, again, the lessons learned by the characters and the messages that you can get as a reader are described and connected in a way that they can relate to that bigger picture, just what we talked about before whenever you're looking at theme. So one final big concept to keep in mind, again, when you're working on your projects is always, always, always use the details from the story to reinforce your ideas. By using the information from the story in your presentations, this will really help your presentations evolve from being good to great. So again, just something important to keep in mind. But that's all I have for you in this video on your short story presentations. I will be back next time with our Road to a 4 series. Until then, this has been Professor Blazek signing off.